Well, it would appear that we are experiencing the calm before the storm. While many people, such as myself included, very much myself, have been celebrating the fact that Donald Trump has won and America is going to now be great again and Trump is going to solve a lot of our global problems. It's slipped my mind, at least, and my attention, that there's still a bit of a buffer period between now and when Trump is sworn in on January 20th. And today, you have Biden, who is somehow awake. Like, where the hell is Biden? But that's a whole different topic. Biden gave Ukraine the approval to use long-range ballistic missiles to hit the interior of Russia. Now, this is insane. This is probably the worst type of news that we could possibly get, other than World War III actually starting, because this is the precursor for World War III, and it's happening before Trump takes office. Now, I don't know if this is the Democrats' way of doing something sneaky and maybe avoiding Trump being sworn in. I have no idea. But this has already been said by Putin himself. If Ukraine uses those long-range missiles, then that means that Russia is at war officially with NATO. And then Russia will be able to use, according to all the codes and rules of law, any necessary powers to protect and defend themselves, which means nuclear. So yeah, not too good. One way to start off the week, obviously, is with news that, oh shit, World War III is about to begin. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. Now, it would take too long to explain how to protect yourself in the event of World War III actually happening. And there's a lot of channels out there that do a fantastic job of that already. But if you want to protect yourself digitally, then the best way to do that is with a VPN, which happens to be today's sponsor. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. We've teamed up together and we're offering my audience 83% off for using code SUNSHINE, which can be found linked down below in the description or the pinned comment below. It's no surprise that we're living in a time of censorship, and Canada is unfortunately leading that race because of Justin Trudeau. Now, Justin Trudeau wants to make sure that you can't see the news. He wants to make sure that you can't see certain content on streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, Crave, and you shouldn't have Disney Plus because, of course, our finance minister said if you can't afford things, you should cancel Disney Plus. So the way around this is through a VPN such as Private Internet Access. Now, for those who don't know what a VPN is, it's a way to encrypt your data, basically putting a cloak over you so that you can freely browse the internet without feeling like your personal information is at risk or the government getting and selling your personal information. And the best way that I like to go about this, the best cloak that I like to put over myself, is Private Internet Access, which again can be found linked down below in the description or the pinned comment below for 83% off. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring this video. And without further ado, let's get into this video. So the layout of this is going to be, the war stuff is going to probably be 5 minutes or about halfway into the video. We're going to start off with some updates of the Canada Post strike that's happening, because that's our major postal service here in Canada, and we're heading into the holiday season, so that's not good. There's a couple updates there. And then Justin Trudeau backpedals on immigration, says that he was influenced by bad actors within the Liberal Party and the powers at bay, which is kind of crazy that he's now reverting on things that he once said anyone who's against immigration is racist. And then we're going to be taking a look at the Russia stuff, and then if we have time, we might add a couple extra stories at the end of the video. So buckle up and hope you stick around for the full thing, because there's a lot of information in this video. Without further ado, let's just get into it, starting things off with a postal strike update.
Growing fear within Canada's small business community of the financial hardships they will face so long as postal service remains shut down. Tens of thousands of employees are on the picket lines for the second straight day. The impact of this national strike already being felt, especially in small towns where store owners say it's hitting at the worst possible time. CTV's Colton Prale reports.
Over the next month, Sarah Lethbridge says her small business would normally make about 3/4 of its yearly sales. Now that may not happen.
They want it in time for Christmas, and if they can't get it, they're not going to order it. So it's really tough.
With 55,000 Canada Post workers striking across the country, Lethbridge's business, which relies primarily on letter mail service, has ground to a halt. And in her rural eastern Ontario town, courier options are scarce. It means stopping delivery or spending an hour driving to and from shipping depots in Ottawa to keep business going.
My time is probably more valuable than anything else because I work full time and I have 2 kids. So it's really the time that I'm losing, and then it could be more expensive.
According to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, 3/4 of small businesses are negatively impacted by the strike, especially those in remote locations.
Estimates are that e-commerce is going to jump another 10 points this Christmas. Canada Post is still one of the largest companies in moving those goods to the final consumer, especially in rural and remote communities.
Canada Post and the union were back at the bargaining table Saturday, but both sides remain far apart on wages and plans for daily parcel delivery.
The best way to get to collective agreements is having negotiated at the bargaining table. Arbitrated contracts only lead to many issues being left behind.
So far, the Labour Minister has opposed mandating postal workers back on the job, like in the port and rail disruptions earlier this year. Instead, Ottawa is sending its top mediators to the tables beginning Monday, hoping that will speed up discussions. Heather.
Colton, thank you.
Right. I mean, this is something that's going to affect so many people. And I think that negotiations definitely need to be had, and this needs to be resolved as quickly as possible. But we do have another update here. Let's take a look, because the actual union president is now addressing the public's concerns about this strike, which is going to clear up a lot of questions. Let's take a look.
Canada Post workers remain on strike for a 3rd day. It began on Friday with over 55,000 employees joining the picket lines. With more on this, we're joined by the Canada Post Union's national president, Jan Simpson. Thanks for joining us, Jan.
Hello, I'm Andalina.
Let's get right into it. For those who don't know, what's the dispute and what are workers demanding?
So we've been in negotiations with Canada Post since November of 2023. We're negotiating for fair wages, improved health and safety, to retire with dignity, and expansion of the public post office.
Okay, and you went straight into a full-scale strike. Why?
Well, Canada Post really didn't give us any choice. They changed our working conditions. They took away our benefits. They also are laying off workers currently.
The government has appointed a mediator. What are your expectations of this?
We've had mediators at the table with us since August. And we look forward to working with a new mediator that will be there, because we know the best way to get to good collective agreements is those negotiated at the bargaining table.
Okay. And the strike comes ahead of a busy holiday season. Why has it gotten to this point?
Well, because we've been negotiating with Canada Post since November of 2023. We tried our best to avoid having this drag out for such a long period of time. So when Canada Post comes to the table with realistic demands and works with the union, we'll be able to negotiate collective agreements, and we'll have a bit more stability for the Canadian public, from our workers, as well as for Canada Post to expand services at the post office.
And of course, you've been talking to some Canada Post workers. Maybe you can give us some insight as to what they're saying, how they're feeling in this time.
Well, I've been on the picket lines. I'm heading there right after this interview today as well. A lot of the members are, they're upset that Canada Post hasn't come to the bargaining table and negotiated fairly with them. Postal workers throughout the pandemic worked, and we extended our contract for 2 years, and we've fallen behind. And Canada Post had agreed that this round of bargaining that they would help workers to catch up. Nobody wants to be on a picket line, but at some point we've got a really strong strike mandate from our membership, and this is what we're doing now. So hopefully next week, when we go to the bargain table with a new mediator and the old mediators, we'll be able to negotiate 2 collective agreements that represent what our workers need and what the Canadian public needs, and also what Canada Post needs. Because Canada Post cannot expect workers, which actually labor costs are down. They cannot expect to fix the problem that Canada Post has on the backs of these workers.
So as this continues, what sort of disruptions could we expect if it persists?
Well, we're still on the picket lines right now, and we're going to be there. But on Monday, we go back to the table with a new mediator to see what we can do. So hopefully, well, like I said before, we'll be able to get 2 collective agreements in place that, meet the needs of everyone involved.
And in terms of disruptions, though, to the postal system, how do you see this affecting it?
While we're trying our best to get back to the table to stop what disruptions are happening currently, and we wish that Canada Post had come to the table with fair demands earlier on. Like I said before, we've been negotiating since November of 2023.
Well, this is obviously affecting millions of people at a crucial time. Global News has heard from charities and small businesses. What would you say to those who are watching?
The same way how workers kept your products moving during COVID, we want to keep your products moving again. So we're looking forward to negotiating contracts and getting things back to normal. And we thank you for the really important work you do. But postal workers also do important work. Taxpayers do not pay our salaries. We're actually taxpayers within the community. So those dollars are being missed as well while we're on strike.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit now, there have been concerns regarding Canada Post's dwindling revenue streams. Do you think the organization needs an...
Yeah, they've been losing like billions and billions of dollars year over year. And unfortunately, this strike is going to be the final nail in the coffin. I mean, this is affecting businesses like today, not just Canada Post, this strike. And I get it, right? Make sure you get paid, get your money, get your worth. But the timing of this is so important. And this has been going on for like a very long time. The idea of a strike and shortages and things like that. I mean, Canada Post employees have not been happy. They've not been appropriately compensated. But at the same time, Canada Post in general has just been a bit of a dumpster fire in terms of how the company is managed. And so let's just wrap this up here and see what they have to say.
Overhaul in order to better serve its customers and retain existing employees.
Canada Post wants to expand to 7-day delivery. They already have the ability to do this. We have come to the table and offered assistance to Canada with how they can do 7-day delivery, and they keep saying no. So Canada Post has, before the strike happened, they had been investing in new equipment to help them be competitive against other companies. But as soon as we began to negotiate, they had a loss. Canada Post has still paid all their management bonuses. They built the new plant, Albert Jackson plant, after the first Black letter carrier. And of course, we're proud of that plant, but we're not proud of the health and safety issues that exist within there. And this round of bargaining, we need to fix those health and safety issues within that location. Also, they bought new fleets. They did not consult with the union, and these trucks are sitting across the country, not being used in parking lots. And as I mentioned before, they're also taking bonuses. Any good company would not be taking bonuses if they're claiming that they're not doing well.
Okay, Jan, thank you for your insight. That's the Canada Post Union's national president, Jan Simpson.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But again, the timing of this is so important. I feel like Canada Post is just kind of being priced out. Like people are, going towards like Amazon a lot more. I mean, I know you can't send a package to somebody else through Amazon per se, at least not yet, but who's to say that that's not what's going to happen in the future? Like Canada Post is really being pushed to the side here with all its competition. And I just kind of want to pass the question off to you. Like, how do you feel about this? Is this personally affecting you? Are you rooting for Canada Post? Do you think that we should subsidize Canada Post, or do you think that because they've just been in massive deficits year over year, they should be gone? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And then we're going to take a look at something that Justin Trudeau's backpedaling on, and that is immigration of all things. He admits that federal government should have acted quicker on immigration. Kind of a crazy thing for Justin Trudeau to say.
Prime Minister Trudeau has arrived in Brazil for the G20 summit and took to social media to release a video saying his government could have acted faster to rein in immigration programs after blaming bad actors for gaming the system.
Looking back, when the post-pandemic boom cooled and businesses no longer needed the additional labor help, as a federal team, we could have acted quicker and turned off the taps faster.
In the YouTube video, Trudeau said increased immigration was needed after the pandemic to boost the labor market, but the Prime Minister says some bad actors took advantage of the programs, including employers trying to avoid hiring Canadians and schools recruiting international students. The government has already announced it is reducing permanent resident streams by about 20% in 2027.
Oh, which is bananas. I mean, good on them for finally doing that. But this is something that Justin Trudeau and his posse of liberal idiots and douchebags have been saying, that, hey, it's actually racist for you to be against immigration. And now here they are. doing the racist thing, but it's not racist when it's the liberals doing it. And before we get into the whole Russia is now defending themselves against the big bad NATO and potentially we're going to be seeing World War III, there is just one more video about Canada and Canadian immigration that I want to play. And this is a recent sit down between Vashi, CTV reporter, and our literal immigration minister. And you can see it's not looking good for any liberals, really.
At that cabinet retreat in Montreal, I believe it was, I asked you about reducing permanent immigration levels. You said at that time, I would say quite clearly, we are not looking at a reduction at the permanent levels of immigration. You are now cutting exactly that by 20%. What changed so drastically in the last 9 months?
Yeah, I'd say a number of things have changed. The economy certainly isn't in the place that it was 9 months ago. When I took over this portfolio a year and a half ago and froze the levels as they were, I really undertook, one, not to be dogmatic about the analysis that I had on the permanent residency levels, on the importance to give a proper snapshot this time of year of the entire population growth and what immigration looks like in the country, so including temporary residency. I think it became clear to me over the last few months as we finalized the levels plan, this is something that takes some time, that there was a need for a reduction not only in the temporary resident space, but also in the permanent residency space, so we could give to Canadians a plan that is reasonable, that shows to Canadians that we can do measured, controlled, managed population growth and immigration in this country, and that we did have to take stock and responsibility for the volume growth that we've seen in the last few years. Not to criticize it, because it's been indispensable for keeping us out of a recession, for making the labor market younger, but it's come with some challenges, and those challenges have become more acute. And listening to Canadians over the course of the last year, listening to economists, listening to all the organizations that approach me, that we go out and talk to, provinces and territories, it's clear that this was something that made sense in the context and will make sense for the next 3 years as we manage that.
Certainly, but respectfully, those challenges that you identify were acute prior to 3 months ago. Your colleague, the Minister of Housing, for example, Sean Fraser, who preceded you in this position, over a year ago at another cabinet retreat in PEI, used the word crisis in an interview with me to describe the housing situation. That challenge, as it existed, was already acute a year and a half ago, but yet it took you all this time to come to the conclusion that the very clear lever you had at your disposal was one you were prepared to use. Why?
Well, I think we have to look at, when it comes to the housing crisis itself, what the volumes of immigration have done to contribute to affordability generally. I think that's an important pedagogical, intellectual exercise that has real repercussions on people's lives and on people that come here. I think with the current numbers and the growth that we've seen, that we've acknowledged, we probably should have gotten right with a better mix, is something that is important to acknowledge, but also make the proper adjustment to make sure that we are acknowledging the importance that a housing crisis that is 30 years old is something where we do have a number of levers, and immigration is one of them. So this is only one tool in the toolkit that we are making important changes to. And we do, if you look at the international student program, the postgraduate work permit programs that come with international students, those measures are actually working. A reduction of 43% of incoming students. That has had sectoral impacts in places like Toronto.
All right, I can't listen to this guy anymore. I'm sorry for dragging you guys through that that soliloquy there, but these people are insane. I'm just going to come out and say it. They have gaslit Canadians into believing that if you're against immigration, if you're against our population growing from external factors like immigration and student visas and all of that stuff, then you are a racist, you're Hitler, you're blah, 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 horrible, horrible, horrible names, right? And now here they are doing that exact same thing, but it's okay because it's the liberals doing it and they have the support of the mainstream media and everyone's actually applauding them, saying, hey, good job. Yay. That's so great of you. And it's just extremely annoying. And it goes to show that this has to stop. This type of behavior, this type of speech, this type of rhetoric of attacking your political opponents for being against immigration, calling them all these names, and then literally going around and doing the exact same thing not too far into the future is insanity. But that's my own personal opinion. I would absolutely love to know yours. And now we're going to take a look at what the actual heck is going on with the war between Russia and Ukraine and how Joe Biden is trying to start World War III before Trump takes office. Here we go.
All right, joining me now to discuss the most recent developments is retired Major General David Fraser. He is CTV's military analyst and the former commander of NATO forces in southern Afghanistan. Hello to you. Good to see you. So Joe Biden's authorization for Ukraine to use these powerful long-range American weapons inside Russia. What does this mean for Ukraine? Is it a game changer in this war?
Well, it's more strategic than it is tactical. It is not a game changer, but it sends a strong message to Russia that the United States wants to support Ukraine. And it's really designed for the Ukrainian penetration in the Kursk area, which gives them a better bargaining chip subject to the point where they might have to go to the negotiating table. And it also opens up the door for France and Great Britain to allow them to use their long-range missiles for Ukraine. So this is good news for Kyiv. It is a signal to Moscow, but it's not going to change what's going on the ground.
And the decision appears to come in response to Russia bringing in North Korean troops, 10,000 of them, in fact. When you say it is not a game changer, is it too late then?
I don't think Marcia, is too late. I mean, it does give the Ukrainians a much needed boost in their firepower to deal with the onslaught of what the Russians are doing. But at the same time, it just shows more resolve of the West that they're going to support Ukraine now that they're fighting inside of Russia, which was a line which we didn't go to before. And it does show for Biden that he's all in to support Ukraine. And at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty what the next administration is going to do, it does give Zelensky a little bit of breathing space for him to fight off the Russians. So it's not a game changer, but it is politically significant. And it also sends a message off to North Korea that they just can't come in and not be touched. The United States is going to support the Ukrainians fighting both the Russians and now the North Koreans.
We are looking, though, at a new sheriff in town. During the campaign, President-elect Trump said he would put a speedy end to this war. He didn't explain how, but he made that promise. So what do you think that means? Would Ukraine need to make some territorial concessions?
Marcia, the bad news is they're going to have to make some territorial concessions. Russia has about 22% of the country. Ukraine has 1,000 square kilometers or a little bit more in Kursk area. Neither side has the power to push or finish off this war. The relationship that Trump has with Putin will be significant. And, they will be talking about options of how to end this war, but not to the satisfaction of Zelensky for sure, or to the Ukrainians who've lost territory. But almost 1 million people, if not more, have been killed in this war over the last few years. So I think the end is
all right. The reality is, to quote a liberal, that Donald Trump has already spoken to Putin. And out of that conversation has been, how are you going to get your troops out of Ukraine and stop this war? And the answer that Trump and Putin have already come to terms with is, if Ukraine signs a contract saying they will not bid on entering NATO for the next 20 years, Russia will remove themselves from Ukraine and the war will be stopped. Putin said, all right, cool. Yeah, I think that's good. Because Putin's biggest worry is that NATO is literally surrounding themselves, or I guess ourselves, around Russia, and he doesn't want that. We've already got other bordering countries, and Putin's like, all right, no, Ukraine, you're not doing that. And for those that don't know, by this point, Ukraine has a bid to enter NATO, but that can only happen once the war has completely ended, because NATO doesn't want to inherit. It's all weird logistics, and it's it's very meticulous, right? The art of war. It's all about following like certain codes and things like that. And so far, Putin hasn't broken any. So far, it doesn't really seem like NATO has broken too many. We kind of skirt the line a little bit. But again, we're going to get into now how just bad and detrimental it is and warmongering it is for Biden to approve these long-range missiles. So right here on CNN, they've said Biden authorizes Ukraine to use long-range U.S. weapons in Russia. And that would put us all into an actual war with Russia.
How much of this is also in response to North Korean troops being in Russia and potentially assisting in this war in Ukraine?
A lot of it has to do with the fact that the North Koreans are in Russia doing this and providing support to the Russians and probably joining them in a military sense. So what the Biden administration is signaling is that that kind of addition to the Russian war machine is unacceptable to us. We don't want foreign troops coming into Russia, supporting the Russian war effort. And the North Koreans are the first ones to do this overtly, at least. And the signal to the North Koreans as well as the Chinese is not to support the Russian war effort, at least not that overtly.
The bad news keeps coming for Ukraine. Russia is not only gaining ground along key front lines, it's also preparing to launch a massive counteroffensive in the southern Russian region of Kursk, the only place where Ukraine has seen major military success this year. All of this as Ukraine nears 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion. And it's now facing, of course...
Yeah, I mean, all of this is horrible. And the only ones that are pushing for this war to actually happen and or continue is the Democrats. And that's why it's just so important that Trump takes office literally immediately. But that's my own personal opinion, and I would love to know yours. And then to add more fuel to the fire here, this is a older post where Putin warns Ukraine use of long-range arms will put NATO at war with Russia officially. This would in a significant way change the very nature of the conflict. It would mean that NATO countries, the US, European countries, are at war with Russia, Putin told Russian state TV. And if this is so, then bearing in mind the changes in the very essence of this conflict, we will take appropriate decisions based on the threats that will be created for us. And so this is why, there's so much reason to believe that if anyone is going to launch a nuclear weapon, it very well could be Russia in defense to NATO really pushing that boundary. The facts are that NATO will be a direct party to hostilities against a nuclear power. I think you shouldn't forget about this and think about the consequences. Right. So it just seems like it's escalating and escalating and escalating. And to remind everyone, this is the video, not a video, it's the video where Putin, just take a look at the subtitles, literally issues his final warning to NATO. It will mean nothing less than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States, European countries in the war in Ukraine. But when it comes to using long-range precision weapons of Western manufacture, it is a completely different story. The Ukrainian army is not capable of striking with modern long-range precision systems of Western manufacture. It cannot do this. This is only possible using intelligence data from satellites, which means that Ukraine does not have. This data is only from the satellites of the European Union or the United States in general, from NATO satellites. Flight assignments from these missile systems can, in fact, only be entered by military personnel of NATO countries. Ukrainian military personnel cannot do this. Therefore, we are not talking about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not. We're talking about making a decision about whether NATO countries are directly involved in the military conflict or not. If this decision is made, it will mean nothing less than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States, and European countries in the war of Ukraine. This is their direct participation, and this, of course, significantly changes the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. This will mean NATO countries, the United States, and European countries are fighting against Russia. And if this is so, then bearing in mind the change in the very essence of the conflict will make appropriate decisions based off of the threats that will be created for us. And so he is not messing around. Now, I think that the only real solution to this is by not allowing Ukraine to use these United States manufactured long-range ballistic missiles to hit targets with deep within Russia. And some of these ballistic missiles can actually have interchangeable heads on it, so it becomes a nuclear warhead to cause significant damage. I'm not suggesting that or even anticipating that Ukraine would do that, but would NATO do that? I don't know. I just know that the only one that can provide peace, not just in the Middle East, but everywhere, the most peaceful world that the world has ever seen, is Trump. You saw in his first term, there was peace, and then he's calling for peace now. Countries around the world, immediately when Trump won the election, all bowed down to him. You had the Taliban, you had Hamas, you had China, you had Russia. Everybody said, okay, I guess we're ready to stop the war and talk about a ceasefire and all that stuff. So Biden allowing this right now to happen is not good for anybody. But again, that's my own personal opinion. I would absolutely love to know yours. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd like to encourage you guys to give a big old smash on that like button and subscribe to the channel. It does really help grow it. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.